Allison. I've been a member of the Haffenreffer Student Group since fall of last year, and it's been one of my primary involvements on campus.
And I just joined this year, and I'm super excited, and I've had a really great time, especially with CultureLab as one of my classes I'm taking this semester on caption the ancient world. We've been able to really get involved with the museum, and I've learned so much about object handling through it, and it's been a really good experience.
Right, so Shoes Have Soul. This has been an ongoing project for about a semester now, and it explores shoes from across the world and sort of tries to give comparisons between shoes that are similar, shoes that are different, and the things that sort of are universal about them. We have shoes from Ghana, we have shoes from Native America, we have shoes from the Yang people in Thailand, just anything and everything that we could find in the museum's collections. One of the big purposes that we wanted to make with this exhibit was to bring some of these beautiful objects into the gallery space. We have such limited space, and we like to use the student group as sort of a tool to bring more of these objects forward. We're working on setting up satellite exhibits around the campus, and on exhibits like these.
And shoes, it's like a really great topic because as a student and like everyone, shoes is something that's really relatable, which is why there's the mirror again, you can consider your own shoes. It's something that is it's a great accessible topic. I think that makes it really appealing.
Right. As far as the research process went, at first we weren't quite sure where we were going with this, but we knew we wanted to do shoes because, like she said, it's very relatable, they're very interesting objects, they're very personal. When you look at a shoe, you can kind of see the foot that's supposed to slide in it. It's a very human object. It's a very universal object. So we started out with just this knowledge that we wanted to make an exhibit that exhibited some of the beautiful shoes that we have in the Haffenreffer collection. From there, we tried to research each of the shoes, and we divided up the work over a break. Each member of the group took home a little bit of information, whatever we had on the shoes, and tried to compile a little bit more information, see where these were going, and we managed to find some comparisons between shoes from different places. And from there, it just evolved, and it's been a real collaborative process. We're the ones who are talking, but it really did involve everyone who's listed on that label, and Geraldine and Kevin and everyone at the museum. So.
And as students, it's obviously a great experience. A lot of us are considering museum work and getting involved in that kind of thing. So it's really been, going through the process. There's no way to do that except for actually doing it. So yeah, it's been really cool.
And I think that the fact that the Haffenreffer offers this opportunity has really, it's improved my life on campus, and I think it's providing people with a really great opportunity to get involved in a way that's just exciting and kind of unique. I don't know anywhere else that I could have really gotten this involved this quickly.
Yeah, I think that that's something the CultureLab also offers, is that it's a chance for us to really connect with other students about our interest in these things, learn about object handling. We took a course and we learned about wood versus leather and gloves and the proper practices, which is a very hands-on experience that a lot of classes don't offer. Although now with the CultureLab, I know I'm in a class and Laura's also in a class, and it's our lead of our classes coming here, looking at the items, taking photos, doing research.
CultureLab is also a great way, I think, to increase visibility for the museum as a whole. In my class, Maze, Gods, and Feathered Serpents, for which these objects here are arranged, almost no one in the class had heard of the Haffenreffer Museum or knew where it was on campus before we had the Haffenreffer assignment. And then they were coming in, they were asking questions of CultureLab volunteers, they were able to engage with the material and with the museum in a way that they haven't been able to before.
Also, it just brings people in. You see, there's drawers full of items in there, but they're coming in and they're circulating. They're seeing this. We've got a lot of really great digital media over there, which helps. And it's all, it just keeps people remembering that museums are alive and they're a great resource. And there are things you can't learn in a book. You have to learn by touching and feeling and seeing.
Can I interject for? I have a question about some of the shoes. The museum had a lot of background information on, and we were able to give you that information. And some of the shoes, all we had were the catalog number and an idea of where they were from, but there wasn't much other information. So you were kind of left to have to figure that out on your own. And I don't know if that's a similar experience. I know, Allison, in your class, a lot of the students were like looking up their objects. They had to study for the money class, and there wasn't a lot of information, and they were like, oh, I can't just Google what this is and look it up, and they had to figure out, how do I figure out how to find this information? It's a little different than doing research for traditional, like term paper or a traditional topic. Can you speak about how you figured out what to do and how the next steps that you had to take?
Sure. For the money class, a lot of things it would be like an iron bar, and we're like, well, great, I know it's an iron bar, but it makes you more aware of the physical qualities, because that's a lot of the research, and it also gets you looking at books. And I think a lot of people in my class have started contacting people, trying to get in touch with people who are in the professional world in a way that is not written down, and I think it's really been useful for us. And also, going to other departments, the anthropology department, the archaeology department, really, it's people who aren't even concentrating in these things are now very involved in getting to know people in those departments, which is great.
I know for my class, we weren't actually supposed to make use of whatever information the museum had on file. We were supposed to simply come in, take a look at the object, and from there find it in a catalog or online. And I know that posed a problem for a lot of my classmates, but it's very similar, like you said, in a way to what we had to do to put together the exhibit. For example, these cornhusk slippers. We had very little information on them other than that they were made from cornhusk and they were from Serbia. The information that we found about land use in Serbia and the price of materials all came from research and inference that we weren't able to simply say, oh, these always mean this to people. Sometimes objects resist that sort of classification, that sort of museum typology. We can put this into a sacred category, or we can put this into this is always used this way. Something like shoes, it's an object that we all sort of know how it's used, but whatever information we can find about it differs a great deal from object to object.
How many shoes did you consider, or did you look at, and then how did you decide what ones to put on display? Were you limited by space? Did you do them by kind of idea, or what?
When we started out, we had the collections manager at the museum, Terry, brought out some shoes that he thought were interesting. I think we considered about 14 or 15 different pairs. From there, we took a look at first we took a look at what shoes we found visually and culturally interesting. And that was, I admit, a bit of an arbitrary judgment, but we wanted to make an exhibit that was eye-catching and that was engaging for visitors. Then we took what the shoes we wanted to take a look at, and we found which ones we could find information on. There were some shoes that didn't make it into this case because we couldn't find much interesting information on them, or any information at all. Shoes of the type, like these Indian padukas were somewhat simpler to research because they're of a very form style. A lot is known about the symbolism represented by them. A lot is known about the reason they're constructed the way they are. But there are other shoes that are much more simply functional, that we couldn't find even any similar objects to compare them to, let alone any information on their manufacture or meaning to the people who wear them. The shoes that made it into this case were the ones that we could find both information on, and we could find a similarity in between them and another pair of shoes. These shelves are organized with comparisons between the two pairs, and that was a judgment that came after we had collected the information on each individual pair.
And aesthetically, they're obviously great choices because they all represent a different type of shoe. They're pretty. I know, since that's also part of the museum, we have to make it eye-catching. We
did try to get geographic, visual, and constructional diversity in the shoes that we were displaying.
Are all these shoes in use in the respective countries that you're coming from, or is all of this material still being used in the countries, or are all of them fell out of use?
For some of that for some of these shoes, that information is unavailable. There are some like these sandals, which are similar sandals, are still very much in use. A lot of places, shoes that are handmade or take time to craft are being phased out by things like, well, in the case of the Mian shoes here, the embroidered ones, these represent a huge investment of manual labor in the embroidery and the sewing. And in the Mian culture, these shoes are being phased out by cheaply produced rubber flip-flops, are the new norm. Things like these moccasins are still in use in ceremonial ways, but are obviously no longer widely spread on the American continent.
And I think for both of those shoes, actually, we're going to try to make available for a class we've been working on 3D modeling. And these shoes, and in particular, the inside is very beautiful. And so these two other people who are in the student group have done a 3D image where you can see the shoe, the whole thing, and I think we're trying to make that available online. Same with this, because the beading is really intricate and beautiful and stuff.
Did you? I haven't read this yet, so. But did you find that these are objects of pride and value in their own cultures? The way the outsider might come in and look at something and say, "This is amazing. This is incredible. We don't have anything like this," and those being either used for display or ceremonial purposes. Can you talk to those ideas?
Yeah, in any culture, something that represents a huge investment of time and labor and fine material is going to be an object of pride. The bottom shelf here, the padukas and the Ghanaian gold leaf sandals, are our category of shoes as status symbols. The Ghanaian sandals have gold decoration which could only be worn by a king, and the padukas are very much representative of holy imagery. They're intertwined with the god Rama, the hero Rama, and the beaded moccasins like these. This is our shelf of shoes as symbol. They have important symbolism on them. Shoes like these, they're beaded on the bottom, so they couldn't have been worn day to day. They were obviously for ceremonial use only, and the symbolism on them represents trails for buffalo, so these would probably have been meaningful in dances or ceremonies which represented the hope for greater herds of buffalo in the future. So those would have been important in the culture just as spiritual, in the same way the stitching on the Chinese shoes represents good fortune. There are other shoes that are more everyday, but like these shoes are both very, very everyday, practical. But even so, there are still points of pride in that the dyeing of the leather is an engaged process. People take pride in the things that they create, and I think that's true universally.
Do you want to discuss a little bit more about the shoes in their categories? Thinking that people have probably been up there to read the labels.
All right. We have 4 categories: shoes as craft, shoes as place, shoes as symbol, and shoes as status. Basically exploring the roles that shoes fill in our lives other than protecting our feet from the ground. Shoes as craft explores the methods that go into the creation of shoes. A lot of the time, culture has very specific practices because the making of shoes is something that's not always easy to learn. You have to, like any craft, you have to master it before you can do it. But there are very different methods that go into the creation of various shoes. Shoes as place explores the geographic limitations on what's available as material, and also the adaptation of shoes to things like climate and geography. Shoes as symbol explores ways that shoes are used to mean more than what they simply are. People place symbolism on your shoes. I don't see anyone with a Nike swoosh, but that means something if that appears on your shoes. You have you can use your shoes to symbolize a great deal more than simply protecting your feet. In the same way, shoes' status explores the ways that shoes are used to delineate people in a social strata.
Final shelf is a mirror, so it's considering their own shoes and what category they go into, or if they go into a new category.
And the intention is very much to have people personalizing this exhibit. We want people to come in and see their shoes in the mirror and know that they're also a part of the exhibit. Their shoes also mean more than protecting their feet. People see your shoes and they will make judgments about who you are, where you're from, what status you have, and this is something that we want people to think about because it's really a fascinating idea, the ways we delineate ourselves and the ways we separate ourselves from the ground or bring ourselves more into contact with.
Well, it used to be that when you were in Europe, everybody knew you were American because you wore tennis shoes. But now everybody wears Nikes, so when they need this universal like that. But if you were going to extrapolate and take shoes out of your own closet, what kind of shoe would you put on each one of those shelves?
That's a good question. Probably in the shoes' status, I have a glossy pair of black pumps that I wear to formal events. Pumps are very much associated with any shoe that's shiny can only be worn so often before it becomes scuffed. So in the same way as the golden shoes, and the beaded shoes, you don't want to risk damaging them. They're clearly for special occasions. The shoes' symbol.
I would put maybe like a pair of shoes like I wore for an event, like that was special. Like I had special shoes for my graduation, and I said like now when I wear them, it makes me feel like there's something more going on. So maybe something like that. But that's very personal, but they're not actually symbolic.
Or like I said, the Nike swoosh maybe. Shoes' place. I have a pair of hiking boots that I use on archaeological expeditions that are very much suited to that and not very much suited to lounging on the main green, very much geographically oriented. And then shoes' craft.
I mean, I would put these, I wear them every day, everywhere. Last night my boss at work was like, why aren't you wearing your regular shoes? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you wear the same shoes every day. They will not fall apart. So that's pretty fascinating.
Right.
Imelda Marcos may be the most famous person who collected shoes, but it turns out that a lot of people have enormous collections of shoes. Do you have any insight into that? Shoes rather than hats and something like hats, but still, shoes keep coming up.
I think what really interests me about shoes, and the reason that I liked working on this, I don't know if it holds true for Imelda Marcos, but I like that they vary so much. Like I have never seen a shoe like the Paducas. They look like they'd be incredibly uncomfortable to walk in. You have to be pinching your front toes together the entire time. But at the same time, I can still see the outline of a human foot in them. I can still see the thing that is sort of universal. And the ways that we alter that as well are very interesting. We don't have a pair in here, but the example that always comes up when you say you're doing an exhibit on shoes is, oh, do you have a pair of Chinese bound feet shoes? The ways that we distort ourselves, that the shape of the foot is something that's very well known, but the ways that we distort that in order for the purposes of beautification or status. And I would say that's very similar in many ways to incredibly high-heeled pumps. Those don't have that same footprint.
There was a nice little piece in the New York Times Magazine on Sunday about the stiletto heel, history and its construction. So worth looking at just one page.
All right, I'll look into it.
It actually said that the way it's seen at the top, it looks like a champagne glass.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. What?
It never occurred to me. Well,
And
knife.
high heels are, it's like a modern shoe. It's a very interesting topic because a lot of designers do shoes that they sell for like certain periods of time. So people's like they're reused, like vintage shoes are very much a thing that people want. And it's sort of like an art piece, I think, for a lot of people.
It's also interesting just looking around here, the enormous variety of the dozen or so people that are here right now.
Right.
Kind of shoes. I see only two real sneakers. There's the sneakers, which is a bit unusual. Parts of Americans.
I would say that the assortment that we're seeing is
Where was it first?
I did.
May I ask what those are?
These are from Morocco. And actually, they have a very interesting interior too. They have this kind of plastic wallpapery kind of stuff. And
They should be in the case.
You can see it in front of your
That's what I was going to do. I also have it in my pockets. A pair of my daughter's shoes, and she's outgrown. They're pretty traditional. These are from Pakistan. And they're very simple, but actually the geometry of the way that they're put together, and then the fact that you're looking at something like this, which is changing the shape to make something that's more idealized. And she loved these and wore them quite a bit. So
They're still very good shape.
yeah, I'm very interested in. I have a lot of pairs of shoes. It's unusual. Not quite that big. But one thing that I thought was interesting that is probably a tangent to your shoes as place is the use of recycled materials, like the insides of these and sandals made out of old tires and other things, which is something when you don't have the material, you make do. And
One of the pairs of shoes that we initially were considering, but that didn't make it into the final exhibit, was a pair of shoes made out of tires. I think
we have them on the other side of the case for another class.
Yeah, we have a few pairs of recycled tire shoes in the case that's directly behind here.
How many of the million objects that Haffenreffer has, how many are shoes? I mean, how many pairs of shoes are
Oh,
there?
that's a Terry question.
That is a fair question.
A lot. We just got a donation of more shoes too. Recently, we're like, oh.
In one of my imaginings, that if I had unlimited time and resources, I would love to set up, for the duration of this, I'd love to set up a place where people could bring their shoes and have them photographed. And we're planning to set up a website for this with the 3D models and some information on the shoes that didn't make it into the case. And one of the things I would love to do is have user-submitted photos. But if that happens, I would definitely love to see those on the website. I have to figure out submissions.
Shoes as a souvenir, I think, is a pull up the top.
Absolutely.
It's also good for Halloween too.
Any other questions? Well, thank you.